Why attacking America is nearly impossible. It's not because of the Army. There's a geographic reality about the United States that makes invasion mathematically impossible. And it has nothing to do with the military budget, nuclear weapons, or the number of aircraft carriers. It's something far more fundamental, something that was locked in 250 million years ago when the continents formed. And once you see it, you'll understand why no nation on Earth has ever successfully invaded the American mainland, why none will, and why the biggest threat to America has never been external. It's always been internal. Because here's what nobody explains. The United States doesn't need the largest military in history to be secure. Geography already did the work. 2 oceans, no hostile neighbors, the richest farmland on the planet, navigable rivers that move goods cheaper than anywhere else, natural resources concentrated in one territory, and a climate that ranges from tropical to temperate. America won the geographic lottery before it even became a country, and that lottery makes conquest impossible. Let me show you why attacking America is a fantasy. Not because of American strength, because of geographic mathematics. The distances, the barriers, the supply chain impossibilities that would destroy any invasion force before it reached the coast. And once you see the numbers, you'll understand why every military strategist for 200 years has reached the same conclusion. You don't invade America? You can't. The map won't allow it. Let's start with the most basic fact. America is protected by 2 oceans. The Atlantic is 3,000 miles wide. The Pacific is 6,000 miles wide. Those aren't just distances. They're logistical impossibilities for any invasion force. Think about what an invasion requires. You need to move hundreds of thousands of troops across an ocean. You need ships to carry them. You need fuel for those ships. You need food, ammunition, medical supplies, vehicles, equipment. And you need to do all of this while an enemy with complete control of its coastal waters tries to sink everything you send. Here's the math. A modern amphibious assault ship holds about 1,800 troops. To invade with a force of 500,000, you'd need 278 ships, just for the soldiers. But soldiers need tanks, artillery trucks, helicopters, supplies. That requires cargo ships, lots of them. Add another 200 cargo vessels. Now you have 478 ships crossing an ocean. Each ship burns about 200 tons of fuel per day. The Atlantic crossing takes about 7 days. That's 400 tons of fuel per ship. Times 478 ships, that's 669,200 tons of fuel just to cross the ocean once. And you need fuel tankers to carry that fuel, which need more fuel to move. The logistics compound exponentially. You're not moving an army, you're moving a floating city. And that city is completely vulnerable for the entire journey. Now here's where it gets worse. The United States Navy controls the Atlantic and Pacific, completely. 11 aircraft carrier strike groups, 70 attack submarines, hundreds of destroyers and cruisers. The second largest air force in the world after the U.S. Air Force is the U.S. Navy. They don't just patrol the oceans, they own them. Any invasion fleet would be detected the moment it left port. Satellites would track it. Submarines would shadow it. And long before it reached American waters, it would be destroyed. Anti-ship missiles launched from submarines, from aircraft, from ships. Each missile can sink a transport. Each torpedo can destroy a cargo vessel. The invasion fleet wouldn't make it halfway across the ocean. It would be at the bottom before it saw the American coast. And even if somehow, impossibly, some ships made it through, they'd arrive depleted, damaged, and facing a defended coastline. But let's say magic happens. Let's say an invasion force somehow crosses the Atlantic, evades the Navy, and reaches the American coast. Now they face the next impossibility. Where do they land? The United States has 12,280 miles of coastline. That's not a beach, that's a continent. An invasion force has to pick a landing site, and every choice is terrible. Option 1, the East Coast. Major cities, dense population, but also the most heavily defended coastline on the planet. Amphibious landing requires beaches suitable for landing craft, flat terrain for vehicles, and proximity to strategic targets. The East Coast has all of that, which is exactly why it's defended. Every major port has anti-ship defenses. Radar coverage is total. Air defense systems blanket the coast. And the U.S. Atlantic Fleet is based in Norfolk, Virginia, the largest naval base in the world. 75 ships, 134 aircraft. If you land on the East Coast, you're landing into a prepared defense. Option 2, the Gulf Coast. Easier landing, less defended, but strategically worthless. You've landed in Louisiana or Texas. Great. Now you're 4,500 miles from Washington, D.C., 2,000 miles from New York. You have to march across the entire country while supply lines stretch across the ocean. Impossible. Option 3, the West Coast. Same problems as the East Coast, but worse. Mountainous terrain immediately inland, limited landing sites. San Diego has the largest naval base on the Pacific. Seattle has submarine bases. San Francisco Bay is a geographic choke point. Everywhere you land, you're trapped between the ocean and the mountains with no room to maneuver. Option 4, Alaska. Technically American territory, easier to land. And then what? You're in Alaska. The nearest American city is 1,500 miles away across Canadian territory. You've accomplished nothing except putting troops in the most remote location possible with supply lines that are laughably impossible. There's no good landing site. Every option leads to strategic failure. And even if you land successfully, even if you somehow get troops on American soil, you face the next impossibility. You have to supply them. Here's what invasion planners don't want to admit. Logistics determine everything. Troops need food, ammunition, fuel, medicine. An army of 500,000 consumes approximately 5,000 tons of supplies per day. That's everything. Food, water, ammunition, fuel, spare parts. To sustain that army for 30 days, you need 150,000 tons of supplies, delivered to a hostile coastline, across an ocean, through a defended sea lane, under constant attack. Each cargo ship holds about 10,000 tons. You need 15 ships per month just to keep the invasion force supplied. And those ships have to make round trips, 7 days across the ocean, 3 days to unload, 7 days back. That's 17 days per trip. You'd need a constant rotation of ships, and every single one is a target. The United States doesn't even need to defeat the invasion force. It just needs to sink the supply ships. Once the supplies stop flowing, the invasion collapses. The troops run out of ammunition, they run out of food, they run out of fuel, they become irrelevant. This is why D-Day was the most complex military operation in history. The Allies invaded France across the English Channel. 21 miles of water, not 3,000, 21. And it required 2 years of planning, complete air superiority, total naval dominance, and the largest logistics operation ever assembled. They built artificial harbors, laid underwater fuel pipelines, and pre-positioned millions of tons of supplies. And they were invading a coastline defended by Germany, which was already fighting the Soviet Union on the Eastern Front. Germany was stretched thin. America would not be. Now, scale D-Day up by a factor of 100. Cross 3,000 miles instead of 21. Face an enemy that isn't fighting anyone else. An enemy with complete naval and air superiority. An enemy with unlimited resources and intact supply lines. It's not difficult, it's impossible. But let's keep going. Let's say an invasion force lands, establishes a beachhead, and somehow maintains supply lines. Now they have to advance inland, and this is where American geography becomes an absolute nightmare for invaders. The United States is 3.8 million square miles. For context, Iraq is 169,000 square miles. Afghanistan is 252,000 square miles. The United States is 15 times larger than Iraq, and Iraq and Afghanistan broke occupying armies. America would be 15 Iraqs simultaneously. You can't occupy that much territory. You don't have enough troops, you don't have enough resources, you can't patrol it, can't control it, can't even map all of it. The invasion force would be spread so thin that they'd be vulnerable everywhere and strong nowhere. And the terrain is impossible. Mountains in the west, deserts in the southwest, swamps in the southeast, forests in the northwest, Great Plains in the Midwest that stretch for 1,000 miles with no cover. Every region requires different equipment, different tactics, different logistics. An army built to fight in one region is useless in another. Vehicles designed for desert warfare fail in mountains. Equipment for forests doesn't work in swamps. You'd need multiple specialized forces, each with its own supply chain, each vulnerable. And here's the thing nobody talks about. America's infrastructure is designed to move goods and people efficiently. Highways, railroads, rivers, airports. Now, the invasion force can't use any of it because it's all controlled by defenders. So they have to build their own supply routes through hostile territory under constant attack. The United States has 47,000 miles of interstate highways, 140,000 miles of railroad track, 25,000 miles of navigable inland waterways. The defender can use all of it to move troops and supplies. The invader can use none of it. They're fighting blind, slow, and unsupplied while the defender has total mobility. This is the geographic checkmate. Even if you land, even if you supply the landing, you cannot advance. The territory is too large, the terrain too varied, the infrastructure too controlled. You're stuck on the coast burning resources while achieving nothing. But let's say the impossible keeps happening. Let's say the invasion force somehow breaks out, advances inland, and starts taking territory. Now they face the final impossibility. 400 million Americans. The United States has more civilian-owned firearms than people. Estimates range from 400 to 600 million guns. That's not military firearms. That's civilian. Rifles, shotguns, handguns, owned by private citizens. In Switzerland, gun ownership is high, and they pride themselves on being difficult to invade because every household is armed. Switzerland has 2 million guns for 8 million people. The United States has 400 million guns for 330 million people. It's Switzerland times 200. Now imagine occupying that. You can't just take cities and call it victory. Every town, every rural area, every farm has armed resistance. And America's gun culture means people know how to use them. Hunting, sport shooting, self-defense training. This isn't a population that needs to be taught how to fight. They already know. An occupation force would face insurgency at a scale never seen in history. Afghanistan had 30 million people with limited weapons. Iraq had 25 million. The United States has 330 million with advanced firearms, unlimited ammunition stockpiles, and knowledge of the terrain. The occupation wouldn't last months. It would be over in weeks. Not because the invasion force is defeated militarily, because it becomes impossible to hold territory. Every street, every building, every mile of highway is contested. Supply convoys are ambushed. Patrols disappear. Bases are surrounded. And here's the critical point. The American military doesn't even need to win conventionally. They just need to survive long enough for the occupation to become unsustainable. Retreat to defensible positions. Let geography and the armed population do the work. Wait for the invasion force to exhaust itself. Because here's what every empire in history learned. You can conquer territory. But you can't hold it if the population refuses to submit and has the means to resist. The British learned this in America in 1776. The Soviets learned it in Afghanistan. The Americans learned it in Vietnam and Iraq. And any invasion force trying to occupy the United States would learn it faster and harder than anyone before. Now, let's talk about the factor nobody mentions. The United States doesn't need to defend everywhere. It only needs to defend strategic points. And those points are geographically perfect for defense. The Mississippi River divides the country. Control the bridges, and you control movement. The Rocky Mountains are a natural fortress. The Appalachian Mountains create a barrier in the east. The deserts of the Southwest are impassable for large armies without massive logistical support. An invasion force can't just land and spread out. They have to follow routes. And every road is a choke point. Every bridge can be destroyed. Every mountain pass can be defended. Every river crossing can be contested. The defender chooses where to fight. The invader has to attack. And in a territory this large with this many natural barriers, the defender always wins. It's not strategy, it's math. But let's address the real question. What about nuclear weapons? If a country can't invade conventionally, couldn't they just nuke America into submission? No. And here's why. Nuclear war doesn't create conquest, it creates mutual destruction. The United States has over 5,000 nuclear warheads. If you nuke America, America nukes you back. Your cities are gone. Your infrastructure is destroyed. Your population is dead. You don't win, you both lose. And even if somehow one side survived, what did you win? Radioactive territory you can't occupy. A poisoned landscape. Dead cities. Destroyed resources. Nuclear war doesn't achieve objectives. It ends civilization. That's not invasion. That's suicide with extra steps. So invasion is impossible. Nuclear war is pointless. Which means the only way to defeat America is from within. And that's exactly what's happening. Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear. America's geographic advantages make external threats irrelevant. But those same advantages have made America complacent. The two oceans that protect us make us feel invincible. The wealth generated by perfect geography makes us soft. The security we didn't earn makes us take everything for granted. Every empire that fell from internal collapse. Rome wasn't conquered. It rotted. The British Empire wasn't invaded. It bankrupted itself. The Soviet Union wasn't defeated. It imploded. And the United States is following the exact same pattern. We're not threatened by China invading. We're threatened by debt, dysfunction, and decay. We're not at risk from a Russian amphibious assault. We're at risk from printing money until the dollar collapses. We're not vulnerable to foreign troops landing on our beaches. We're vulnerable to internal division, tearing us apart. The geography that makes invasion impossible also isolates us from consequences. We can make terrible decisions and not face immediate collapse because the oceans buy us time. We can run massive deficits because nobody can force us to pay. We can hollow out our manufacturing base because we're not worried about supply chains being cut by a neighbor. But that insulation is temporary. And the pattern says we're running out of time. Here's the mechanism. America became powerful because of geography. 2 oceans, navigable rivers, vast resources, temperate climate. We had every advantage. And we used those advantages to build the richest economy in history. But we stopped building. We started consuming. We started importing instead of producing. We started borrowing instead of earning. And we assumed geographic security meant we could do this forever. Spain had all the silver in the world. They thought it made them invincible. They stopped producing and started importing. When the silver ran out, they collapsed. We have the reserve currency. We print dollars and the world accepts them. We've stopped producing and started importing. And we think it'll last forever. It won't. Britain ruled the oceans. They thought naval dominance meant permanent empire. They borrowed to fund wars, debased the pound, lost productive capacity. The empire collapsed in 40 years. We rule the oceans. We think carrier strike groups mean permanent power. We're borrowing to fund commitments, debasing the dollar, losing factories. The pattern is identical. The Soviet Union had nuclear weapons. They thought mutually assured destruction meant they were secure. They overextended militarily, exhausted economically, imploded from within. We have nuclear weapons. We think the arsenal makes us safe. We're overextended, exhausted, and fracturing. Same pattern. Geography protects us from invasion, but it doesn't protect us from ourselves. And right now, we're the biggest threat to America. Not China, not Russia, not terrorists, us. We're $36 trillion in debt. We print money to pay interest on previous borrowing. We import $800 billion more than we export. We can't build infrastructure. We can't agree on anything. We can't even define what a crisis is because half the country thinks everything is fine and half thinks it's collapsing. And the geography that should be our greatest advantage is making it worse because we don't face consequences immediately. We can make mistakes, and the oceans buy us a decade to realize it. By the time the consequences hit, the damage is irreversible. This is the real threat, not invasion, implosion. And geography can't save us from that. Now let me show you the numbers that prove America is unconquerable externally, but vulnerable internally. The United States has 11 aircraft carrier strike groups. Each group has one carrier, multiple destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and support ships. Each carrier holds 60 to 80 aircraft. Total, the U.S. Navy has over 800 aircraft that can project power anywhere on the planet. No other country has more than 2 carriers. Most have 0. China has 3 carriers. Russia has 1 that barely works. The combined naval aviation of every other country is less than half of America's. This is dominance, not superiority. Dominance. Nobody can challenge American control of the oceans, which means nobody can invade. The U.S. Air Force has over 5,000 aircraft. Fighters, bombers, transport, tankers, reconnaissance. The next largest air force is Russia, with about 3,000. But most of Russia's aircraft are outdated. America's are not. Air superiority determines modern warfare, and America has it everywhere. An invasion force crossing the ocean would be under constant air attack from bases in the United States, from carriers, from allied territories. They'd be bombed day and night for the entire crossing. Most wouldn't make it. The United States has 14 ballistic missile submarines. Each submarine has 24 missiles. Each missile has multiple warheads. Total, America has the ability to destroy any nation on Earth from submarines alone. And those submarines are undetectable. They patrol the oceans silently. You can't find them. You can't target them. And if you attack America, they launch. This is deterrence. Not just military strength, mathematical certainty that attacking America results in annihilation. No rational actor attempts it. And then there's the final layer, the 400 million civilian firearms. This is the deterrent nobody talks about. Occupying a hostile population armed with modern rifles is impossible. The Soviet Union couldn't do it in Afghanistan with 10 million people and bolt-action rifles. America has 330 million people with AR-15s. Insurgency at that scale breaks armies. It broke the British in 1776. It broke the French in Algeria. It broke the Americans in Vietnam. And it would break anyone trying to occupy American territory. The math is clear. America cannot be invaded. The oceans are too wide. The coastline's too long. The logistics too impossible. The population too armed. The military too dominant. Geography and force make conquest a fantasy. But internal collapse is different. That's not impossible. That's likely. Because every advantage we have externally makes us weaker internally. We don't worry about supply chains because we're protected by oceans. So we offshored manufacturing. Now we're dependent on China for medicine, electronics, rare earth elements. If supply chains break, we can't produce what we need. We don't worry about currency collapse because the dollar is the reserve currency. So we print without restraint. $6 trillion since 2020. The money supply is diluted. Purchasing power erodes. Eventually, the world stops accepting dollars. And when that happens, we can't import anymore. And we don't produce enough to sustain ourselves. We don't worry about debt because we've never defaulted. So we borrow forever. $36 trillion and climbing. Interest payments approaching $1 trillion per year. At some point, we can't pay. And when we can't pay, the system collapses. Not from invasion, from mathematics. We don't worry about social cohesion because we've never had a civil war in 160 years. So we let division metastasize. Red states and blue states, urban and rural, productive and dependent. At some point, the center doesn't hold. And when it breaks, geography becomes a curse because the country is too large to hold together without shared purpose. Spain collapsed from internal rot while sitting on a mountain of silver. Britain collapsed from debt and overextension while ruling the waves. The Soviet Union collapsed from economic exhaustion while armed with nukes. All of them thought geography and power made them invincible. All of them were wrong. And America is telling ourselves the same lie. We're exceptional. We're different. We have technology. We have the military. We have the geography. It doesn't matter. The pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical, and we're deep into the sequence. So here's the final truth. Attacking America is impossible. The geography won't allow it. The military prevents it. The armed population makes occupation a nightmare. Externally, we're invincible, but internally, we're fragile, and getting more fragile every year. The debt compounds, the currency debases, the manufacturing disappears, the society fractures. And geography, which protects us from enemies, isolates us from reality. We won't fall to invasion, we'll fall to implosion. Just like Spain, just like Britain, just like the Soviet Union. The pattern is locked in, the question is timing. Maybe we reform, maybe we rebuild manufacturing, maybe we fix the debt, maybe we restore cohesion, maybe this time is different. But the pattern says otherwise, the math says otherwise. And history, which has watched empires collapse the same way over and over, says we're about to learn the lesson the hard way. 3 empires fell from internal collapse despite external invincibility. Spain had geographic security and fell. Britain had naval dominance and fell. The Soviets had nuclear weapons and fell. America has all 3 and we think we're immune. We're not. Geography makes invasion impossible, but it doesn't make implosion impossible. And right now we're not threatened by foreign troops landing on our beaches. We're threatened by our own decisions, our own debt, our own dysfunction. The enemy isn't external, it's internal, and geography can't save us from ourselves. If this showed you that America's real vulnerability has nothing to do with the military and everything to do with the choices we're making right now, then you understand the pattern. Subscribe if you want to see what comes next, because the protection geography provides is permanent. But the prosperity it enabled is temporary, and we're running out of time to realize the difference. The oceans will always be 3,000 miles wide. The coastlines will always be indefensible for invaders. The terrain will always favor defenders. America cannot be conquered from outside, but it can collapse from within. And that's exactly what's happening. Welcome to the final stage